Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Lora Rolling and this is part 1 of the Halloween ornament tutorial. This is the Halloween ornament that we are making. It is so cute with the pumpkins and the bats. And so spooky, right? Today we're going to be doing the unit called Pumpkin Vines. We just have a few materials to get ready, so let's get them listed and then we can get started. Let's go. So the beads that we're going to be using in today's video are all Miyuki Delicas. I have silver lined green, opaque chartreuse AB, and silver lined orange. Just to keep it simple, I'm going to call this green, light green, and orange. We'll also need some beading thread and a beading needle. I like to use the Eslon Fire thread in the color crystal, and this is a 4-pound thread. You could also use a 6-pound thread. And then I like to use a size 10 beading needle. If all you have is an 11 or a 12, that would work too. For implements, I like to hold on to my thread with my long nose pliers at the end of the video, and then I cut my thread with scissors. And then I also am going to show you how I use the fire method to end the tail today. We'll also need a plastic crafting ornament to complete this project. We're not actually going to use this plastic ornament in today's video, but you'll want to get your hands on at least one of them to complete the ornament. So this is a 2.36 inch plastic crafting ornament, and you can find them at your local hobby store. That's where I get mine, and I buy them in bulk. Or if you just want to get your hands on one or two, you can always find them in my Etsy shop. So let's thread our needle with 3 feet of thread, and then we can get started. So I've threaded my needle, and now I'm ready to pick up my first 3 beads. Let's pick up 1 orange and 2 green. Remember, when I say green, it means the dark green. And then we're going to take those 3 beads and we're going to pull them down to the end of the tail, leaving about a 6-inch tail. And now we're going to tie a square knot. So cross over on top and pull your tail through, and then cross over on top again and pull your tail through. So you should have 2 loops, and I'm going to put my fingers in the lower loop, the one that has the beads in it, and then I'm going to tug on the tail thread and the long thread until that top loop turns into a knot. Now I'm going to take my tail, and I'm not going to touch it to the flame, but I am going to get it super close so it melts the tip. And it turns it into this little teeny knot. Now I'm going to keep my fingers in the loop, and pulling on the long thread, I'm going to twist the loop until that knot meets the long thread. Now I'm going to pull that knot with my thumbnail all the way down to the beads. And it turns the beads into this little triangle, and that completes our first row. So what we want to do is make sure that that knot and the thread looks like it's coming out of the green bead. So we're going to just tug that thread over to the green bead so it really looks like it's coming out of it. And now we're ready to pick up our next 2 beads. Let's pick up one green and one orange. Now it looks like our thread is coming out of the green bead, so let's sew through the orange bead. And now let's see if we can get our beads to sit right on top of the beads below them. So now we're ready to pick up our next two beads. Let's pick up an orange bead and a green bead this time. We're coming out of this orange bead. Let's sew through the green. And once again, try to get those beads to sit right on top of their buddy beads. Now let's pick up one light green and one dark green. We're coming out of this bead. Let's sew through the next, and we'll also sew through the bead right below it. Sewing through two beads means we're stepping up, putting our thread in position to start the next row. So making sure that our beads are sitting right on top of their buddy beads. We have completed row number 2, and now we get to start row number 3. So let's start by picking up one green and one orange, and sew through the next bead. Now let's pick up one orange bead. We're coming out of this second bead from the top. We're going to skip the bead that looks like it's set down inward or downward. We're going to sew through the bead that's poking up. So we're skipping the downward bead and sewing through the upward bead. I'm going to call that upward bead the up bead because we're sewing through up beads all the way around. Now let's pick up one orange and one green and sew through the next. Now let's pick up one green. We're going to skip the downward bead. We're going to sew through the up bead. Now let's pick up one light green and one green and sew through the next. And now we'll pick up one light green. This will be the last bead in this row, so we're skipping the down bead. We're going to sew through the up and the bead right below it. Sewing through two beads means we are finished with this row and we get to start row number 4. Let's start with one green and one light green and sew through the next. One orange and sew through the up bead. One orange and sew through the up. Two light green and sew through the next. One light green and sew through the up. One light green and sew through the up. One light green and one green and sew through the next. One light green and sew through the up. And one light green and sew through the up and the bead below it. Sewing through those last 2 beads means we are ready to start row number 5. Let's start with 2 light green, then 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 light green and 1 green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, and 1 light green. Sewing through those last 2 beads, and now we get to start row number 6. Let's start with 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 light green, 1 light green and 1 green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 2 light green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 light green, and 1 green. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and now we get to start row number 7. Let's start with 2 light green, 1 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 light green, 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 orange, 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 green, 1 and sew through the last 2 beads. I was on autopilot. Alrighty, now we get to start row number 8. Let's start with 1 green and 1 light green. One light green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 orange, and 1 light green. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 9. Let's start with 1 green and 1 light green. 1 light green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 2 light green, one light green, one green, one light green, one orange, one orange, one orange, one light green, two light green, one light green, one light green, one light green, one orange, one orange, one green, and one light green. Sewing through the last two beads. Now we get to start row 10. Let's start with two light green, one light green, one light green, one light green, one green, one light green, one light green, one light green, one light green, two light green, one 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 orange, one orange, one light green, one light green, two light green, one green, one light green, one light green, one orange, one orange, one orange, one green, and one light green. Sewing through the last two beads. And now we get to start row 11. Let's start with 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 light 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 green, 2 light green, 1 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 orange, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 orange, 1 orange, 1 light green, 1 green, and 1 green. Sewing through the last 2 beads. And now we get to start row number 12. Let's start with 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 light 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 green, 2 light green, 1 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 green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 2 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 green, 1 orange, 1 light green, 1 light green, 1 green, 1 light green. Sewing through the last 2 beads, and that completes our 12 rows. And if this is the first triangle that you've done with me, you'll see that I always add connection beads to one side or another, sometimes 2. In this particular unit, we're going to not add connecting beads on this side, but we are going to add connection beads on this side, and then we're not going to have any on the top. So to start out, I like to cap the corners with 1 light green, and it turns that corner into a little point. And now what I like to do, just to make it easier to sew, I like to turn my unit over, and now I'm going to, without picking up any beads, I'm going to just sew up 1 bead per row until I get back to the top. So our goal is to get to this corner right here. And I like to follow this quadrant line right here. It's just easier to sew through the beads for me, but you can pick any beads that you decide to, as long as you're hiding your thread and sewing up 1 bead per row. That should be good. And this is usually where we have the question of the day. So my question of the day is, where do you shop for your pumpkins in, when it's harvest time in autumn? Do you buy pumpkins, or do you have the crafty ones where you've made a lot of them, so you just set them around your house? Or do you go to a pumpkin patch and buy, and pick out your pumpkin? Or do you just pick it up at the supermarket? Let me know what you do, where you find your pumpkins. And I don't know if you noticed, but I wanted to show you. Do you realize that all of these little pumpkins on the vine are hearts? They're actually hearts. How cute is that? Oh my gosh, I loved designing this little pumpkins on a vine unit. So cute. Alrighty, we are almost up at the top. So yeah, leave your comment down below in the comments. I love to hear from you. So please add a comment and let me know where you get your pumpkins from. Alrighty, we are up at the top, so now let's add one light green bead so that we can cap this corner. And it turns it into a little point. And now we're going to add beads up this side. So let's start with one light green, 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 one green, one light green, one light green, and one light green. Now we are at our third corner. Let's cap it with one light green. And now we are going to sew up 6 beads without picking up any more beads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now we're going to do what I like to call a zigzag. So we're coming out of the top of this bead. We're going to sew down the bead right next to it. And then we're going to sew up the bead right next to that one. Now we're going to sew up 1 bead per row. And do that up 2 rows. And now let's do another zigzag. We're coming out of the top of this bead. Let's sew down the bead right next to it. And then sew up the bead right next to that one. Now sew up 1 row and sew up 1 more row. And now I feel that those zigzags that we did and are weaving through a few beads has really locked in this last bead that we added. If we didn't do a few zigzags, this bead would probably come loose, and we don't want that. So we have secured our beads and added everything that we need. So now all we need to do is cut our thread. So let's hold on to our thread with our long nose pliers, and then get our scissors as close to the bead as possible without cutting the bead, and then just cut off the thread. And that completes our first number 1 unit. We only need 5 of these for this project, so go ahead and do this 4 more times, and I will see you in a second. That was so much fun. Thank you so much for being here with me today and beading along with me. Remember to like and subscribe and hit that bell button so you're notified when the next video comes out. I can't wait to see you there. Thanks for watching.